Good evening. The time is 7:02, and I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Board of School Directors Legislative Meeting for December the 19th, 2022. Ms. Evans, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Evans.
Present.
Dr. Davis.
Present.
Ms. Hawthorne.
Present.
Ms. Ioannidis. Mr. Kessler.
Present.
Dr. Levinowitz. Mrs. Sherpier.
Present.
Mr. Sirota.
Present.
Mr. Wallach.
Present.
Thank
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Now I'd like to ask everyone to please arise, and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. It is a pleasure to see so many students and parents and community members in our audience tonight, and thank you for being here. In a month when we have a lot of celebrations, we are able to celebrate here tonight, and it is our pleasure and our privilege as a board to sit here tonight and honor some of our high school students who had achievements this fall season in two specific areas, in athletics and in academics. Before we get to that, we do have the normal operational meeting of the board, and we have two reports before we get to our ceremony, and we'll go right into them now so we can move things along. The first will be our student government report, and I'd like to call Ben Serafin up.
Thank you. Students are in the final stretch before winter break begins on Friday, and I'm sure everyone is looking forward to the much-needed break. But before that, there's still a lot happening at the high school. This week, the SGA is giving out candygrams to students as part of the high school tradition. Students were able to buy candy canes for friends, peers, and teachers to wish them a happy holiday and thank them for all they have done this year. We are also delivering holiday cards that students made for residents of Fort Washington Estates this week to brighten their holiday season. In sports news, the boys basketball team is hoping to repeat as division champion this winter with wins against Wissahickon and Quakertown last week. The girls team is also off to a great start. Both bowling teams also defeated North Penn, and a couple of weeks ago, UD bowler Ari Wiener, who's in the audience tonight, bowled a perfect 300 game, an impressive and rare feat. The track and swimming and diving teams also had success this past week, as it's looking to be a great sports season for the high school. This past Wednesday, the Night of Guitars was held in the high school library with some great performances for the holiday season. Speaking of great performances, Ms. Guarenyi and several UD students recently attended the PA Thespian Conference at North Penn, with their play, Princess Party Smackdown, receiving great reviews. 3 UD seniors were also inducted into the Hall of Fame at the event. Congratulations to them and the entire theater department for their amazing work. In other news, sophomores and juniors received their PSAT results this month as all UD students continue their hard academic work. We are moving forward in the second quarter, and midterms are just around the corner. And on that positive note, as we look forward to winter break, we at the high school hope everyone has a safe and wonderful time and wish everyone a joyful holiday and a happy new year. Thank you.
Ben, thank you so much, and we wish the same to everyone at the high school and throughout the school district as well. Thank you, as always, for your updates on the goings-on at the high school in all aspects of the high school. We really appreciate being updated on what is going on. The next report will be from Dr. Yanni, our superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Wallach. My report is very brief tonight because we're just about to recognize some of our students. I wanted to alert everyone that's listening and everyone in the audience tonight that we are going to approve next year's school calendar. Our December issue of News from the Nest will go out before we go home for winter break, and so all calendar details will be included in that newsletter. I want to wish everyone a happy second night of Hanukkah. And whether you're celebrating Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, or any other holiday, we hope you get to rest, relax, and recharge over the break.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yanni. We appreciate that. And next, we'll move on to the next item in our agenda, which is the academic and athletic recognition. Mr. Schultz, will you be leading that for us, please?
Thank you very much. So good evening. Welcome everyone to the December Student Recognition Program. Members of the board, administrators, thank you very much for the opportunity for us to introduce you tonight to some of the high school's finest. If you look at the circular cardinal window over there, it has a slogan that is often quoted, and that is excellence in academics, activities, and athletics. In this evening's program, we will be celebrating students in 2 of those areas. Parents, family, friends, thank you for coming out to support our scholars and our student athletes. We're going to start the program by recognizing our National Merit Commended students and our semifinalists, and then Mr. Highland will be recognizing our fall sports teams. So to bring to your attention those students who earned recognition from National Merit, would you please welcome our wonderful, Supervisor of Guidance, Ms. Donna Ward.
Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure and honor to be here tonight to recognize some of our seniors for their accomplishments in the National Merit Scholarship Program. I'm going to begin by recognizing our National Merit semifinalists. These academically talented students represent less than 1% of the United States high school seniors that took the exam. Seniors, students, as I call your name, please come to my left, your right, to be recognized and receive your plaque. Alex Kai. Snehad Chahari. Thomas Dang. Hannah Gong. Arden Kang. Landon Coleman. Megan Lim. And Ben Seraphin. Welcome back. Approximately 2/3 of the top 50,000 high school seniors that took the PSATs received letters of commendation in recognition of their outstanding accomplishment, in recognition of their outstanding academic promise. This recognition is for commended students. Again, seniors, as I call your name, please come to my left, your right, to receive your award. Camber Beaucamp. Emmeline Bell. Matthew Castronovo. Jack Eckert. Shane Faberman. Jonathan Im. Catherine Lee. Sarah Meltzer. Amelia Pastor. Eric Patucci. Sophia Pfeffer. Catherine Porter. Leah Sirota. And Ari Weiner. Again, another round of applause for all of our semifinalists and commended students. For those students that are here, if you could just step out in the hallway with me for a brief picture, and thanks again.
All right, good evening. I wanted to extend a sincere thank you to the school board for allowing me to present tonight to recognize our fall athletes. I want to thank Mr. Schultz, Dr. Yanni, and the entire school board for their unwavering support of me and the athletic department. I owe a tremendous thank you as well to Naz and the custodial crew, Bob Lester in facilities and grounds, Chris Robbins, Sydney Ebner in the transportation department, and finally Jen Andrews and Katie Bartosik for all they do for our athletes. Fall 2022 was successful in a number of ways. We had 414 fall athletes represent Upper Dublin High School in our community this year, about a third of the school. As always, the season began in early to mid-August with optimism buzzing around campus about the potential success of our teams this upcoming year. Albeit a year later, some of our teams were still facing some obstacles from the storm last year. Our water polo team spent the first 4 weeks off-site and outdoors due to the natatorium roof still being fixed, and our football team played their first game at Wissahickon since the new lights were not installed yet. However, despite those obstacles, it was great to see a sense of normalcy back for our kids in our programs. On the individual side of things, we had 69 athletes earn Suburban 1 All-League honors this year, about 17% of our participants. All those student athletes have been recognized in Mr. Schultz's community update, as well as our athletics updates page. Of those 69, 23 of them earned first team All-League, and those first team athletes will be recognized on our new first team wall in the Aplex hallway by the pool locker rooms. We had 7 athletes individually qualify for their district tournaments. We had 4 girl tennis players and 3 golfers. We had 3 individuals qualify for their state championships in cross country. On the girls' side, Mimi Pastor took over 30 seconds off her personal best time at districts to help her qualify for the state championship meet. Being at Lehigh that day and seeing the excitement not only that Mimi showed, but her teammates, coaches, and family is what high school sports is all about. On the boys' side, junior Gus Platt and senior Matt Castronova both qualified for the state meet, Matt finishing in 10th place. In team sports, we had 3 teams win Suburban 1 League championships this fall. These teams were girls cross country, golf, and football. Our field hockey, boys soccer, girls soccer, and football teams all qualified for the district playoffs. Both our soccer teams earned home games and advanced to the second round. We had 3 teams qualify for states. Both our water polo programs qualified for their state tournaments, with the girls finishing 7th and the boys 8th. Our football team earned the number 1 seed in the district tournament and had 4 home games. They won the District 1 championship on Thanksgiving weekend by a score of 21-7. And a true testament to their dominance was the fact that they won their 4 playoff games by a score of 121-7. Unfortunately, they ran out of time in the state semifinal game, but it was a tremendous season to say the least. Now I'd like to give recognition to some of our individuals and teams. The first individual we'd like to recognize is our state medalist this fall season, Matt Castronova. Matt, if you could come on up. Coach Vandergriff wasn't able to be here tonight, but he did write the following. Matt Castronova is a focused and confident runner. Luckily, his abilities match that confidence. More often than not, the coach has to back Matt away from doing more, choosing to lead a race or running too fast a pace. Coach jokingly said the weight room is about the only place he doesn't have to keep an eye on Matt to ensure he doesn't overdo it. His dedication to improvement has paid off. Last year, he finished 29th, 4 spots away from medals at the state championship, and he was intent on winning a medal this year. On his way to state championships this year, he ran a lot of miles. He was 2nd at Suburban 1 and to the eventual state champion. He finished in both 10th place at the District 1 championship as well as the following week at the PIAA state championships. He is also about as nice a guy and a good a team leader as a coach could ask for. In fact, it's possible that his positivity has helped the team more than his high finishes. Matt, as a gift for your state medal finish, the athletic department is giving you this quarter zip jacket, and congratulations on a tremendous season. All right, the first team I will recognize is our golf team. And if there are any members of the golf team here tonight, we would ask you to stand up at your seat. I'm not sure if any are here. Coach Scalici wasn't able to be here, but he did pass along the following message. The 2022 varsity golf season was a successful one, fostering a lot of promise for next year's squad. The team is made up entirely of 10th and 11th graders, and they pushed through an early loss to Happero and an unexpected one to Abington to share the Liberty Division crown and successfully defend their title. The team's 10-2 record nearly matched that of the previous year's senior-heavy team, creating plenty of hype for next season. Team leaders Talia Hoffner and Al Eby both came away with first-team All-League honors, also each making it to a second day of the district tournament. Junior Zach Holmland also made it to the district tournament while receiving second team, and honorable mention honors went to Cold Coffee, who participated in the league tournament. Every member of our team, from the 5 varsity debuts to our improving veterans, played a key role in making this season a success and setting up for a potentially deep run next year. The golf team members already received their medals at their end of the year banquet. However, I would still like to call out their names: Matt Casey, James Castronova, Cole Coffey, Jem Coffey, Alex Eby, Talia Hoffner, Ezra Holman, Zach Holman, Josh Kim, and Cameron Osborne, and the team was coached by Mr. Jake Scalici. If we could give them a round of applause. The second team we recognize is the girls cross country team, who've also for the second consecutive year won the Suburban 1 Liberty Division Championship. If there are any members of the girls cross country team here tonight, we would ask you that you please stand in your seats. All right, we got 2 here. Unfortunately, Coach Torpy, because he's coaching, was unable to be here, but he did share the following message. The Upper Dublin girls had one of their better seasons in recent history. Early in the summer, it was evident our varsity girls were eager to train hard, and the consistent effort paid off as the Lady Cardinals capped off their second straight 5-0 record with another division title. The pack of Mimi Pastor, Emily Kulak, Brooke Reardon, Lily Pittacus were key throughout the regular season. They traded individual wins and running as a pack when they needed to hold off a tough divisional competition. Allison Gay, Megan Lim, Kaylee Clark, and Veronica Medvedeva rounded out the deep varsity team. At the Solderton Twilight, the girls won the meet with an average time of 20:49 for their top 7. The following week at the historic Paul Short Invite, they earned a 6th place finish out of 43 teams. At districts, the girls placed 16th in AAA, 10 places higher than last year, and it was also the second highest finished in the last 8 years. However, as I mentioned earlier, the biggest news of the day was the amazing effort by Mimi Pastor, who PR'd by 33 seconds and comfortably qualified for the state championships. Her time of 1927 was the 6th fastest district performance by an Upper Dublin Lady Cardinal in the last 12 seasons. The girls also received their league championship medals at their banquet, so I will still call their names: Allison Gay, Emily Kulak, Megan Lim, Veronica Medvedeva, Amelia Pastor, Lily Pittacus, Brooke Reardon, and the coach was head coached by Chris Torpy. If we could give them a round of applause. And finally, will be our football program. And if the members of the football team who are in attendance could please stand up at your seats. Coach Stover was unable to be here, but he did leave me with this speech for the evening. He would like to apologize for not being available this evening. Football has been played here at Upper Dublin since 1954. In the 68-year history of the program, the 2022 team is only the 3rd team in Upper Dublin football history to go undefeated. They go into the history books with the 1960 Cardinals, who went 8-0, and the 2015 team, who went 14-0. This is something very special and an accomplishment that all these young men should be proud of. This year's team won the first Suburban 1 League Continental Conference Championship, and they claimed the 4th district championship in the last 8 years by defeating Chester Ruston 21-7. The team had an incredible 17 players earn all-league honors this fall as well. The team lost in the state semifinals to Imhotep Charter 21-14. However, the grit, determination, and perseverance that was shown on the field that evening cannot be talked about enough. The easy thing to do when down 21-0 was to give up, but not this team. They stuck together and battled until the very end. The staff and players would like to thank Upper Dublin Superintendent Dr. Yanni, the UDH administration, and the school board for their support this year. We had 10 home games, and we saw you in all the elements, including the snow versus Plymouth Whitemarsh, and we plan to be back next year. The boys have not received their SOL medals, so when I call your name, please come up and grab your medal from Mr. Schultz. All right? Isaiah Akers. You know what? We have 50 of them, so we'll hold the applause till the very end. That might take a little longer. So, Tafiq Bartlett, Eric Berman, Bill Brightcliffe, Niles Bunn McNeil, Kyrie Butler, Nate Cairns, Martin Campbell, DJ Cerisier, Jacob Kornbluth, Carlos Cortez, Liam Coyne, Nick Cummins, Kevin Etkins, Jake Evans, Logan Fitzmaurice, Nick Fornwalt, Wesley Gill, Riley Hackett, Christian Holland, Dan Johnson, Seth Johnson, Chris Colbrenner, Dominic Lappa, Nafis McIntyre, Scott Montgomery, David Morris, Colin O'Sullivan, Ryan O'Sullivan, Dominic Paone, Kevin Pazzaretti, Quincy Pauling, Austin Pendleton, Griffin Penzabine, Ben Pinkos, Brian Portney, Star Reeves, Trey Relvis, Shine Roberts, Phil Roll, Alex Rossman, Evan Sanders, Ray Santiago, Paul Stoffel, MJ Stokes, Anthony Verzicchio, Justin Wall, Jordan Weiss, Coleman Zamborski, and Haim Zellis. The football team was coached by Brett Stover, and it had a list of assistant coaches, Dave Sowers and Brendan Paulson, who are here this evening. If we could give the football players a round of applause. And football players, I'm sure people are going to want to get pictures, so we could go down into the hallway somewhere to get a photo for you. And thank you very much for everything this evening. Look forward to reporting back in a few months with the winter season. Thank you.
Mr. Hyland and Mr. Schultz and Ms. Ward, thank you so much for that ceremony this evening. To all of our students, we look forward to continued successes, and we hope to see many of you and many of your fellow students here for winter and spring celebrations in athletics, arts, academics, activities, and all other aspects of school life. We're going to take just about a 3 to 5 minute pause right now in order for the football team to get their picture taken, and we would love everyone to stay for the rest of our meeting, but we do understand if people have other places to be, so anyone that wishes to excuse themselves can do so during the break. Thank you. We'll be back in about 3 to 5 minutes.
Also in a bad mood for similar reasons about footworks, because every year they do sleigh ride. Yes, they
We haven't gotten into the fight yet. Too early to celebrate. Let's pick. Is there one thing on the agenda we could have? No, I missed that one.
Which is disappointing. Yeah, I had Brooke call her back last week because she had called. Thursday, yeah. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Hey, that's great.
Okay, we are going to get back to our agenda for our meeting this evening. The next item on our agenda is the first opportunity for public participation. This is for agenda items only to provide participation to the board. If anyone would like to come up, please approach the microphone, state your name, where you reside in the township, and Ms. Evans will time your 4 minutes. Seeing no community members approaching the microphone, I will close public participation. Next on our agenda will be the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes for approval. All board members have had access to review the minutes. The first is the November 21st, 2022 legislative meeting. The second is the December 7th, 2022 reorganization meeting. And I'll ask for a motion to approve both sets of those minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Sirota. Second.
I second.
Thank you, Ms. Hawthorne. Any comments or questions on the minutes? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much. Next item on our agenda will be our Education Committee recommendations. Ms. Sherpier.
Caught me by surprise here. I am sorry. I think all items on the agenda A through C were discussed in the Education Committee. And I make a motion that we approve items A through C.
Do we have a second for that motion?
I second.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Any comments or questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Next, we're going to move on to our Finance Committee recommendations. Mr. Sirota.
Thank you. We have 15 items under the Finance Committee recommendations tonight. All of these were discussed in detail last week at the Finance Committee, except for item G, which is our regular monthly payments. So I will make a motion to approve items 6A through 6O.
Thank you, Mr. Sirota. Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Evans, thank you so much. Any questions or comments from the board?
I would like to take this opportunity to extend another big thank you to the Fort Washington PTA for their donation to facilitate replacement playground equipment at Fort Washington. This is using funds that people donated following the tornado for losses at the elementary school. And so, again, a huge thank you to the PTA and especially to the donors who donated to the PTA's fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sirota. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. Motion carries. Thank you so much. Next item on our agenda is our Personnel Committee recommendations. Dr. Levinowitz.
We'll take all 4 items together. I would like to make a motion to approve items A, B, C, D under personnel.
Thank you, Dr. Levinowitz. A second to that motion.
Second.
Mr. Sirota, thank you very much. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Excellent. Motion carries. We're going to skip the Policy Committee recommendations. Ms. Iannitti does not get a turn this month as there was no Policy Committee meeting. We do have one item of other business. It's the school year calendar for 23-24. And Mr. Sirota, if I could ask you to take that.
Certainly, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 23-24 school year calendar as attached to the agenda.
Thank you so much. Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Sherpier, I think, beat you to it, Dr. Levinowitz. Thank you so much. Any questions or comments from the board on the school calendar motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. Motion carries. The next item on our agenda is our Solicitor's Report and Sunshine Act announcements. Mr. Diazio.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. The Sunshine Act announcement for this evening. The board met in executive session tonight, beginning at 5:45 prior to tonight's public meeting to discuss the items that were approved as part of the personnel agenda this evening, as well as to discuss negotiations with the UDEA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diazio. We appreciate it. And we are next up to our second opportunity for public participation. This is for any topic. Any community member that would like to speak, please approach the mic, state your name and where you reside in the township, and you have 4 minutes that Ms. Evans will time on the clock.
Hi, my name is Katie Riley. I live in Fort Washington. I am the president of the Fort Washington PTA, and I just want to say thank you guys so much for supporting us for this new playground. We're very excited, and we think it'll be great when the school's back together and we have a new playground and everyone is back where they belong. And so thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Riley.
Hi, good evening. My name is Liz Ferry, and I'm on Willow Avenue in Upper Dublin Township. I serve as Upper Dublin Township Commissioner in Ward 1, and I'm here tonight on behalf of a resident of Ward 1 who lives in Store Creek and lives on Creek Drive and had his house mostly destroyed. As a result of the incident, they had to live in another housing unit and did not have access to their mail and did not get notice about school tax, and now they're facing a fine and a lien on their house. And so I'm here tonight to talk to the board about considering providing, not sure the right term, whether it's amnesty or forgiveness or what have you, for tax penalties or liens against individuals who were victims of the tornado and didn't get proper notification. I think it's a pretty exceptional event, and hope it's just a handful of folks that this has happened to, but hope you'll consider in a future meeting helping these folks out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ferry. Not seeing anyone else approaching the microphone, I will close public participation. I will also say that we did not receive any pre-submitted comments on the form. We now have an opportunity for comments from board members to items addressed to the board, or from the administration. Dr. Yanni for items addressed to the administration. Dr. Yanni, any comments?
I'm actually going to defer to Mr. Sirota.
Regarding the item about the resident from Stewart Creek looking for, I'm not sure of the proper term either, forgiveness on the tax penalty. We don't currently have a mechanism in our policy to grant that in any reasonable time fashion. So in order to consider that item, we will have to bring it up at a future agenda, either as a modification to existing policy or as a special, a special item where we pass a resolution and a waiver as a single case. So we will consider those possibilities and bring that up at a future meeting. I'm not sure exactly what form it will take. I would estimate that that would probably happen at either our January Policy Committee meeting or our January legislative meeting. So keep an eye on future agendas to see what direction that takes.
Thank you, Mr. Sirota. Dr. Levinowitz.
I just had a question regarding Mr. Sirota's response. The concern, is there a time clock that's ticking with this resident in terms of penalty?
So at this point in time, presumably the district is still collecting the tax, or the tax can still be paid to the tax collector for deposit into the district's account. At some point in time, when the tax goes unpaid, any taxes that are not paid, generally at some point at the end of the year, would get referred to the district's delinquent tax collector. Once the tax is turned over to the delinquent tax collector, the board doesn't really have any authority at that point to waive any fees, because it's a separate matter that needs to be taken up with the outside collector.
Well, yeah, if we decide to, we can. We would want to, if we were going to do something about it, we would want to get it done before it goes to the delinquent tax collector, as Ed says. But we don't have a mechanism to do it before the deadline takes effect on January 1st or December 31st or whatever it is. So, so it'll have to happen after the deadline, but hopefully before it goes to the delinquent tax collector.
We can work with the tax collector. Delinquent taxes are turned over to Portnoy, but we can check with with our tax collector and circle back with the board tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon and let you know what type of time frame.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, our tax collector can no longer collect on behalf of the district as of the end of the day on December 31st. So once January 1st hits, our tax collector, it's no, as Mr. Diazio said, it's no longer within our control. So that's sort of the deadline that we're operating with. I would certainly, and we can reach out to the taxpayer and encourage them to make payment before December 31st. If there's further discussion that the board wishes to have on policy in this matter. I think that's important to note.
And at that point, then, if the board does provide a waiver for the penalty, it would be a refund to the taxpayer, correct?
We would certainly have to look at that and work that out. I think that once it goes to the delinquent tax collector, it really is out of our control at that point.
Can someone just clarify for, we're talking about we have no mechanism, but can we just, clearly define what the policy is at this point so that everyone understands that?
Yes, so the way the policy is written now, it says that the board, every year the board receives a number of requests for waivers. in that policy, it says, with the exception of extraordinary circumstances, that there wouldn't be any type of waiver given. The policy expressly says failure to receive mail in that policy. So that when we refer to the mechanism, that's the language that we're actually referring to.
To be clear, failure to receive mail, according to the policy, is not considered a reason for leniency or whatever the word in there is.
Just to put a fine point on that, I think the rare and extraordinary circumstance language in the policy, it says that failure to receive mail is not a rare
Thank
and
you.
extraordinary circumstance such that the board would have the discretion to waive it. So I think trying to bring it full circle, what Mr. Sirota was saying earlier is that if the board were to entertain this, there would need to be a mechanism outside of that policy for a policy exception. And that is something that the board can certainly take up at a future meeting if it is the board's desire and wish to do so. Mr. Kessler.
Is there a date on which it's referred to the debt collector?
I believe it's the end of the year, but Mr. Leckman can.
The district's elected tax collector can no longer collect on behalf of the district after December 31st.
You know, that's not the question I'm asking. The question I'm asking is, does that mean on January 1st it's automatically referred to a debt collector, or is there a period of time in between December 31st and some other date in January, given the fact that we have limits on when we're meeting and the policy committee meetings, et cetera, et cetera?
There is a period of time, but as of January 1st, it is delinquent, and that's the report that gets sent to the delinquent tax collector. So it doesn't get sent on that day, but that is the report that the tax collector needs to turn over.
I think to answer the unasked question there, if the tax were to be paid, including the penalty, or if tax were to be paid before December, including the penalty that you have to pay because it's already late, before December 31st, then it doesn't go to the delinquent tax collector at all. And we could potentially, if we chose to take it up, issue a refund for the portion that would be appropriate to refund.
Mr. Sirota, our tax collector can no longer accept payments at that
Right,
point.
if he
So it would
pays it
need to be
before December
facilitated
31st.
through the delinquent tax collector. Before December 31st, our tax collector could collect it.
Right, that's my point.
Yep. I don't know the answer to that, and that's why I said we would have to determine that.
I don't believe that can take place. I don't believe that the tax collector can go back in 2023 and issue a refund for taxes paid during 2022.
All right.
So, Mr. Sherper's had her hand up, and I'll get to you next. Ms. Sherper.
So just to clarify, we're talking about the penalty only, not about the taxes. We're talking about the penalty. And I think we could argue that there is a very unusual circumstance. So I would hope that we can at least discuss this at a following meeting to see if something can be addressed, given that the circumstance is so very unusual. Maybe not the mail not received, but the cause for that because there was a tornado that really impacted a number of people in the community.
Sure. Andy.
So are we aware of a mechanism that can be utilized to the extent that this taxpayer pays the taxes and the penalties before December 31st, and then this board later takes it up as a consideration and we determine that for whatever reason we're going to modify a policy which would enable this taxpayer to have the monies returned to him? Is there some mechanism through which that can occur? Because you're telling me that the tax collector can't refund the money. So, I mean, there needs to be a result that can be acted upon that makes a difference to the tax collector if we decide to go down this road. Is there an answer to that?
The answer to that is the board is in a public meeting now and can take action tonight if it chooses to take action tonight.
But it's not on the agenda, so we can't, right?
Matter can be brought up as business that arises during the course of the meeting, so it could be. You'd need to take public comment on the item. Or alternatively, there's a couple days left in the year to try to resolve it, but you don't have board action. You won't have an opportunity for board action in the meantime.
I think, but Andy, are you asking, just as a simple mechanism, can the district issue a check not through the tax collector? Like, is that a mechanism by which someone can be refunded if we decide that refunding is the appropriate thing?
That's right. I want to know that to the extent that we go through this process, because we believe it's something we should do and we vote on it, et cetera, we get to the end of the day and the will of this board is we're going to modify a policy, or we're going to create an action point so that this individual is not penalized because of circumstances that are extreme, because he's been displaced from his home and what have you. Is there an ability for us to get the money back to this taxpayer?
I believe that given that the request has already been made, and that the board has, as discussed tonight, indicated that it's going to take this under advisement, there is very likely a way to do that, so long as in the ultimate board action, you clarify sort of the effective date of whatever your resolution to this is. Does that make sense? So when you discuss it at a future point in time, it will need to be clear that your decision at that point in time, if there's a departure from the current policy, you'll need to indicate sort of an effective timeline for that exception or change in course.
Sounds like we have some research to do.
If the taxpayer doesn't, correct. If the tax isn't received by the end of the calendar year, there's not really anything this board is going to be able to do for the individual who has already come forward. You can change your policy prospectively, but there won't be a way to address this individual's circumstance.
But that's if the tax is not paid, right? If the taxpayer were to pay the tax and not the penalty, then what would happen?
It would still get turned over to collection at this point. So they would need to pay the tax with the penalty and then petition the board to grant a change. And that would come before the board in a public session for approval.
Andy, did that answer your question or not?
I think everyone on this board knows I'm a lousy poker player. To a certain degree it does, but I don't, my concern is, at the end of the day, if this board's will is to grant an exception, I want to make sure that there's a practical end result that makes sense and can help this individual. And if not, I want to know that in advance, because we're all here now, and if we need to act now to do it, then I think we need to act now and have a discussion about it.
So
I- is there, sorry, I cut somebody off.
No, I'm just concerned, we have a board policy in place, so are we suggesting that we violate our own board policy? Because right now, it seems to me that since we have a policy in place, we would have to go through the correct channels in order to make a change in that policy in order for us to, do something on behalf of this taxpayer.
I think, go ahead, Mr. Serota, you first.
I was going to say something similar. I mean, I think we don't know what the solution would. There isn't a motion on the table for us to discuss. We have no idea what that motion would exactly look like. Certainly, if the approach were, the right approach were to actually modify the policy, that requires 2 months of talking through the policy process, et cetera. If the process is something else, like passing a one-time resolution that, affects some narrow, maybe this one taxpayer or some small group of taxpayers, that we have to draft that resolution and discuss the actual wording of it. So I don't think there's anything we can realistically do tonight And, and therefore, I think the only approach, the best approach is if the taxpayer is able, the most, to pay the tax on the penalty, and hopefully we'll get to a point where we can come up with a mechanism by which we could refund a portion of it. But I don't even know exactly how we can do that. We have to figure that out. So I don't know that we can do it. I know you want an answer, but I don't, I don't know. I don't know what it is.
It's not that I want an answer. I just, I think that this is a circumstance that we need to appreciate, and I want to make sure that I'm not asking us to violate policy, but if we need to modify it or put something in place in terms of.
So if I can, Mr. Diazio, typically changes to an agenda not made within 24 hours, earlier this year that became part of legislation. Amending an agenda tonight to whether we're going to waive the policy or suspend the policy, is that something that would violate that legislation?
There is language in the Sunshine Act that permits the board to take action on certain items that are not on the agenda if they arise during the course of the meeting. Certainly there was public comment here this evening, and so there is a way for the board to take action on this item tonight if the board wanted to do so.
We would have to draft a resolution. We can't modify a policy in one night because our policy says we have to go through two.
I do have a question. Sorry.
So we'd have to pass a resolution that we don't know what it would look like. We have to draft a resolution right now and pass it in one meeting, right? That would be the way to. I don't think we can do that.
What if
I know it's a slippery slope. You don't want to waive the policy. But in extraordinary circumstances, you waive the policy.
if the board would like to consider taking action, it would be either a suspension of the policy or an exception to the policy. There would be a way to do that this evening. If the board was interested in doing that, I would just ask that we go into a recess for 5 or 10 minutes, and I can prepare, the language that I think the board would need to consider, and you can have discussion on that and vote on it.
I would prefer not to act that quickly. I think there's too much here to try to digest. I want to do it the right way. I don't think realistically we can do that in one meeting. So my inclination would be to, I understand maybe there's a way to do it. I don't think it's a wise approach.
So if I'm understanding, the policy violation is the by mail. Is there another way that we can position the ask that it would not be a policy violation through extreme circumstances or something underlying?
Unfortunately, the policy is remarkably clear on in this particular case.
So one caveat to the ability to take action during the meeting is that you actually can't do that for items that have a financial component. So as a result, I do not believe you would be able to take action on the specific request that's before you because that action would involve the expenditure of funds on the part of the district. You could take action on your policy this evening, and at that point in time, if the board were to either modify or suspend the policy, the administration would then be able to implement the policy as changed by the board this evening. But in terms of granting or denying the specific request that has been presented to the board, we would not be able to take action on that this evening.
So you're saying there is a legal way for a school board to modify a policy when that item was not on the agenda and do it all in one meeting?
It has to be a de minimis, has to have de minimis impact on non-financial items.
That just seems like a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a lawyer. I'm not even sure I know what that means. When we say de minimis impact, so if we change our policy to say that we are allowed to take exceptions, I mean, those, I don't know, that could have a financial impact, right? I understand your point. We can't, weigh in on this specific
It's a new
request.
law.
Yeah, totally understand, yeah.
It has not been interpreted, and we would be potentially wading into the waters of testing that. So the safest course of action is to not take action this late. And Mr. Kessler, to your point, I understand what you're asking for and the questions you have. The best way forward, the best way forward, if possible, is for the taxpayer to make their payment, for the board to have future discussions on this item, and when the board comes to a resolution, be able to retroactively make the taxpayer whole if that's the decision of the board with respect to the penalty. That's the cleanest way forward.
I'm going to ask a question, but I don't know if we have an answer to it. And my question is, when did the taxpayer first notify tax collector of this issue?
So the series of events is July 1st, tax bills went out. Mid-October, our tax collector sends reminders to all taxpayers that have not yet made their payment to make them aware that penalty is coming up as of October 31st. That is a step that tax collectors are not required to take, and ours does, as a means of making sure our tax collectors know that penalty is coming and they can make payment before then. November 1st, our tax collector sends out notices of liens if payments are not made by December 31st. It was at that point that the taxpayer contacted our tax collector and said he received the notice that taxes would become delinquent. So it was maybe the second week of November. I don't have the exact date off the top of my head. And at that point, he was referred to my office.
Even if we had discussed that day, it still takes two policy committee meetings and two legislative meetings to get through a policy change. So even if we had started that day, we wouldn't have been able to get it done before December 31st. If the approach were a policy change.
Yeah, that was my question. Does this require a policy change, or is there a way to make an exception to the policy in particular circumstances?
I think my opinion is that there isn't a way to make an exception to once you talk about the policy, you're talking about basically changing the policy, and that requires the whole policy process. But I think there is a way that we could pass a resolution that is specific to a particular case or set of cases that did whatever the resolution says. I think you can do that, but that still requires proper consideration and board discussion in public. And we're not there. We haven't had that. We don't have any language in front of us. We don't even have a proposal of specific language. So, we could potentially start that process and do it in less time than it takes to modify a policy. But I'm not sure that's even the right approach to do it yet.
And I think, Mr. Sirota, what you're saying is that we could, under our operating guidelines, create an exception essentially to any policy for a very limited set of circumstances to be specified in a resolution, and that is contrasted to an actual change in the policy, which would be a permanent change in the policy. They're sort of the two options that
In
are
my head,
potentials,
but,
right?
I
agree.
think we need others who are, more vested in, in the knowledge of all these processes, because, this is one of those things that just doesn't come up. So I've been on the board almost 10 years, and this kind of thing hasn't come up. So those people who are more experts from PSBA, et cetera, or the solicitor's office could help us navigate the process better than, but that's how I read the stuff, yeah.
Mr. Diazio, if you're able to answer this, let me know. And if you want a couple minutes to cogitate about it, please let me know that as well, and we can certainly take a brief recess. If we were to pursuant to Operating Guideline 5, could the board tonight consider a limited policy exception for the purposes of some narrowly tailored language in a resolution without actually changing the policy? Is that something that the board could do this evening, given that it wasn't an agenda item? And like I said, if you want to think about it.
There is a way for the board to take action this evening. Given that we are operating within the guidelines of a revised Sunshine Act, if the board wants to take any action on this item this evening, to your point, it would be helpful if we would take 5 or 10 minutes so that I can map out, at least for the board leadership, the steps that we would need to take and the public announcements that we would need to make before the announcement to ensure compliance. But yes, there are a couple different ways that the board could consider action this evening that could at least potentially resolve the issue.
Mr. Diazio, to take that recess for you to think about that some more, do we need a motion to do that?
Yeah, just a motion for a recess.
In light of this discussion, I'm going to make a motion for a 5 to 10 minute recess for Mr. Diazio to collect his thoughts and be able to present to us what options, if any, we might have this evening. Do I have a second to my motion?
Second.
Any questions or comments on the motion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. It's currently 8:07. We'll be in recess till 8:17 approximately. Okay, if I could ask the board to return to the podium. Like many things I do when I set time deadlines, I run late, so I apologize to everyone for that because, but we're going to resume our board meeting now at 8:25, it looks like. Mr. Diazio, have you given some further thought, and if you could offer some words for us to consider?
Sure. So at this point, I think the board has made clear in the discussion leading up to the recess that it wants to have further discussion on the request that was received for a waiver of penalties. As we all know, there's not another opportunity for formal board action prior to December 31st. So what I would recommend at this point in time is that the board have further discussion either at the January legislative meeting or the policy committee meeting. Certainly I'll work with Dr. Yanni leading up to those two meetings to frame that discussion based on some of the informal feedback that's been received. What I would say is that for any tax waiver requests that are pending, including the one that Ms. Ferry brought up during public comment this evening, in order to take advantage of any waiver that the board may ultimately grant, the taxes would need to be paid by the end of the year, because if the taxes are not paid by the end of the year, any future action by the board is not going to apply for any taxes that have been turned over to the delinquent collector or that are no longer able to be collected by the district's collector. So for anyone that, again, has a pending request and is hoping that the board will ultimately grant the request, those taxes would need to be paid by December 31st, and hopefully then the board can bring resolution to the matter in January or February.
So I think that puts a fine point on it. If anyone wants to discuss that further or have any comments, but it sounds like with our inability to take immediate action tonight, that the board, the sentiment of the board here this evening is to consider the matter at a future meeting in January, and per the solicitor's recommendation, if the taxes are paid, then something could be potentially worked out if the board were to approve something in January with the taxpayer whose issue was raised this evening. Is that a fair characterization, Mr. Diazio? Yes. So I think we would take no action this evening in light of that guidance, absent anyone on the board making a motion to the contrary. I think we move on then. Agreed. Okay. Ms. Hawthorne?
I just want to commend the board for taking the recess and exploring all possibilities before moving on. So thank you for extending our night tonight and working to do what's best for someone in the community.
And I think we will hear follow-ups in January at future meetings, whether this item and the subject of this item resumes at either a policy discussion or a legislative discussion. And I thank the board for all the indulgence and the discussion this evening on this matter. Okay, I think that addresses all of our public participation for this evening. Anything else on public participation? Okay. We have some informational items. We have our enrollment report. We have our liaison committee reports. Do any liaisons have anything to add to the reports posted in the agenda? I will just add one thing, that I have a typo in the foundation report. It says that the Wizards game is January the 24th. It's actually January the 21st. So please, the Harlem Wizards are coming for a big fundraiser for the Education Foundation on the 21st. It's a great evening. A lot of teachers from all schools will be playing the Wizards in basketball to raise funds for the foundation, which is a great thing. Okay, we also have our monthly committee meeting minutes for information from our November Education and Policy Committee meetings and November Finance Committee meetings. And the last thing for informational items is our upcoming meetings. We have an Education Committee meeting on Wednesday, January 4th at 6 o'clock. We have a Policy Committee meeting at 7 o'clock on January the 4th, or immediately following the Education Committee. We have our Finance Committee meeting in January on Wednesday, January the 18th at 6 o'clock. And we have our legislative meeting in January on Monday, January the 23rd at 7 o'clock. Any further comments from the administration or the board? Ms. Sherpier.
Yeah, I want to thank Dr. Davis for her 2 years of leadership on this board, and for Mr. Wallach to step up and Mr. Sirota to fill the big shoes that are left. She's staying with us, thank goodness, but 2 years of leadership for the board has been much appreciated by all of us, and hopefully the community as well.
Thank you.
Could not agree more. They are big shoes, but we're going to do our best. Thank you to Dr. Davis. With that, I think on behalf of the board, we wish everyone in the community a healthy and happy holiday season, a healthy and happy new year, and we will see everyone in 2023. With